And in case you haven't seen any of my videos before, I am recovered from DP and DR, and I had DP and DR for 10 years, from when I was 16 until like right before I turned basically 17 until I was 27. So right at 10 years. And I came back into my body in 2010, and I think it's May 31st, will be 7 years. So I am making a video, and I wrote down on a list of all the things I did that were like therapies that helped me, and kind of how I went about doing them and how I made it affordable for me. Although if you've seen my previous videos, you know that I went into a ton of debt trying to see lots of different doctors because I was my own advocate. And then I also wanted to, I also talk about what else I did, and I'm sure this is going to be a growing list, but it seems like this is something that people are asking for. And then I also made a list of other things that helped me. So feel free, this might be a longish video because I'm going to go into some detail, but feel free to just listen, clean your house, put it in the background, and I'm just going to go and just, for as long as my video will let me go. Okay, so the first thing I would say, now I just want to say, so to be clear, that there was nothing, like no one thing that I did. I did lots of things just like everyone else is. So I just wanted to say that as a disclaimer, it's not like there was one method or thing. I don't know what the cure is for DP and DR. I have no idea. I just know that I did a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. And what I think happened was eventually my being believed that I was safe, that I was okay, and that I was no longer in harm. And so it was like the natural progression for me to come back in my body. Okay, so here's what I did, and I'll tell you that before I recovered, I was frantic. I was like a hamster on a hamster wheel. The stress of just not being able to find a cure and wanting to be cured so bad, was with me 24/7. And there was not one moment during that entire 10 years where I was back in my body. Not one moment. So I had like the constant 24/7 kind. Okay, so I'm going to go through it as fast as I can. People were talking about cognitive behavior therapy. I don't know if that's exactly the type of therapy I had, but I got a therapist, and I had therapists throughout the whole 10 years. I didn't ever take medicines other than Zoloft for a short stint. Let me just clarify that the modalities that I'm talking about are the things that I did on my own in the last probably 2 years, like the things that kind of got me, I think, over the hump. And I'm going to be very, this is extremely transparent, so I'm going to tell you my process. Okay, so get a therapist. That was huge for me. And so the therapist I got, I'll tell you, I think it's really, really easy to want the therapist to be perfect. None of my therapists during the entire 10 years, none of them. I probably had 20 different therapists, maybe 30, in different ways, like through college. No one suggested I had DP or DR. No one suggested dissociation. No one really diagnosed me. So I would say, don't worry about finding a perfect therapist, because a lot of therapists have no idea or aren't trained and don't know about this. And even if they do know about it, because they haven't experienced it, it might be really difficult for them to understand or help you navigate a cure. Because even, you all know, even what we're reading about it, unless someone has experienced DP and DR, it is really, it's so vague and so generic. So you will probably be your best advocate. So I would say get a therapist. And the point of the therapist for me, what happened for me that was really helpful in the therapy sessions was I would talk about what was happening and my therapist would mirror it back to me. So I would say things that were going on at home. Let's say things that I thought were normal. And my therapist would mirror it back to me and help me have maybe a different response. And maybe, and one of the things that my therapist helped me do eventually, which is on my next list, was move out. Even when I didn't have enough money. But the situation was so toxic and there was so much addiction in my family that moving out was the best decision, even though at the time it meant going into like an obscene amount of credit card debt. So, and this is the deal. I'm being completely open and honest and raw, okay? So here we go. So I would say get yourself a therapist. Now, I'll tell you how imperfect my therapist was. I went to a church where basically they would, the therapists were getting their certifications, and so they needed to acquire a certain amount of hours. So my sessions, they were sliding scale, and based on my income, they were like $10 a piece. So I would say don't worry about finding a therapist who's like, knows about DP and DR. Find a therapist who can help you who can help you mirror back what's going on. And even if their insights are setting boundaries with certain people or getting out of a relationship that is toxic or helping you eat foods that are nutritious, the key with a therapist, I think at this stage, is being able to say things out loud and being able to hear yourself say it. So just having a space to speak and be heard and be listened to. So that, I would say, is the most important thing. So even if they don't get DP and DR, don't worry about it. Just go, and as long as you feel like they're helping with something, even if it's small, even if it's organization, even if it's helping you get a job that feels okay, even if it's with your self-esteem. People were saying in the thread that they feel like an alien with DP and DR. Even if it's someone just hearing you say that, that is value enough for your $10. So that's really important. I would say get a therapist and look for one, who is inexpensive. If money is an issue for you, I know there's a lot of young people here. There's a lot of students, and some colleges, it's free, or you can have 6 sessions. So I would just say start, and if you really don't like the person, get rid of, let go of them and find someone else. And adopt the attitude of interviewing a therapist. And the truth is, it really bothered me that no one could kind of corroborate the condition I had or talk about DP or DR or dissociation. But the thing is, there was actually value in being able to speak and be heard and doing it weekly, doing it in a scheduled way, putting it in your planner. Okay, the second thing that was helpful was EMDR. And maybe you have insurance, maybe you're a student and you can go see a therapist who can do the EMDR with you. I think it's really important, really helpful. I would say it's not necessary, you don't have to do it, but that was helpful. And if you can't see a therapist, get the app, right? There are EMDR apps out there, and you basically can just, in your earbuds, have a meditation, listen to a meditation, and let it go back and forth. And, EMDR doesn't work for everyone. I wouldn't have said, before I recovered that it worked for me because I didn't recover. But it did give me a lot of insights, and it really helped me see how neglectful my family was. And my family, they're not bad people. There's a lot going on. There was active addiction. There was neglect. There were people who didn't know how to parent their children. Even though now we have a fine relationship, but it's really 2 adults who are interacting. So I'll just say that if I were looking back from the perspective of not having healed, I might have said none of these things worked because I didn't recover. But looking back now, I think all of those things helped me recover. So EMDR is one tool. And like I said, nothing is a cure-all. Nothing, I believe, did the cure. But all of these things combined helped. Now I'm going to go as long as my video lets me go, but I don't want to get cut off. Now the next one is a really, really, really big one. Okay, here we go. So probably like 6 years into having DP and DR, I found a 12-step recovery. And that's anonymous. I don't share that with people, but I'm sharing it here for the purpose of the group because it's extremely helpful and it's free. Now, you might know about 12-step recovery for, you probably heard of AA for alcoholics, but there's actually 212 fellowships and they're in every country. So even if you're in Iran or Saudi Arabia, there are going to be 12-step fellowships. And if you can't access them on face-to-face, which they have several in every city, you can access them online. You can access the phone meetings. You can access the Skype meetings. So here are some. If you identify as someone who has really dysfunctional parents or dysfunctional grandparents, chances are you qualify to be in a program called ALANON, which is for families, family members or friends of alcoholics or people who have addiction. Even if you are dating someone or you've been in a relationship with someone who's an addict in any way, even if they're like a sugar addict or an exercise addict or a sex addict or whatever it is, you can qualify to be in this program called ALANON. There's another one called Codependence Anonymous, and so many people with DP and DR probably are codependent because we lose a sense of self and we take on other people's senses of selves. Anyway, I would just Google it. That's Codependence Anonymous, but there's all different fellowships. So the reason these fellowships are so helpful is because basically it's like group therapy. However, there's no crosstalk. So people aren't giving each other advice. They're basically just saying what they need to say, and the other people allow them to speak, and so they can be heard. And I would say that because I came from a family where there was alcohol, like alcohol addiction, I started going to Al-Anon, and then I went to sometimes like 6 meetings a week. And it was super helpful for me to get grounded and talk about the trauma, like talk about the trauma of the living situation. It was so helpful for me. It was so helpful to learn how to take care of myself. Little things like making sure I was eating food that was healthy and nourishing me and not just eating crap. It was huge in self-care. So I would say if you can go to a 12-step fellowship, that would be awesome. Even if you don't even know what your thing is, and I'm sure there are 12-step fellowships for people who, use marijuana or anything you can think of that might have been problematic, or if you're a relative of someone who did something like that. Even if you don't know, if you feel like this might be an option for you and you just want to go get more information, go. And you can Google Al-Anon, it's spelled A-L-A-N-O-N, or you can Google anything, any kind of 12-step fellowship. There's also like OA for Overeaters Anonymous. But the point is, the miracle for me was being able to speak when I didn't feel like I was in my body, speak really open, honestly, intimately, and hear myself and have other people hear me. I mean, that was amazing. Okay, the fourth thing that I did, and I did this like an addict looking for something. I did EFT. And so this is available. There's like a billion videos on YouTube. I would do this for hours on end because it didn't like get me back in my body, but it made me feel better. And so basically it's tapping, and you can Google anything like EFT for depression, and you'll get, if you look on YouTube, and there'll be videos, and basically you say certain things and you tap here, and then you tap these points. You know, you tap these points and you do it over and over, and you follow the guides, and then you can start to make your own scripts. So it's EFT, and it stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And what it accomplished for me was some sort of sense of feeling in my body. And so I am one of those people where I was just scrambling and did everything. Okay, so my video might end. I'm trying to speak really fast. Let's see. The things that aren't therapy modalities that worked for me. Friends were important. And I would say what I started to do was, looking back, I looked for people who showed up, like friends or people who wanted, maybe they had trauma in their lives, but they wanted to connect with me. And so I would embrace them. Also, leaving toxic environments was really important. I mentioned earlier leaving my parents' house was really important in getting my own apartment. And then eventually having roommates. I was scared shitless to interact with other people and live in the same space with other people. Okay, let's see. Okay, I have a few other things on here I put on the list, and I will add it to it. I begged people who were close to me, like I had a boyfriend at the time, I begged him to help me. This worked for me, just knowing that I was able to express to someone how desperate I was. That was really important. I read tons of self-improvement books from Barnes & Noble. I don't think they were that helpful, but I was like spinning my wheels. And then I was so pissed that I had all these books, and they were so depressing that I gave them all away. I donated them. So I mean, like, I did a lot of different things, but I think the main 4 things are: get a therapist, even if they are sliding scale and it's a $10 therapist. And you can Google the university near you and call and ask, you know, if they have a sliding scale space, or where their therapists who are getting degrees are doing their hours, and maybe they'll refer you to like a church or a school or a center where basically they have a sliding scale, because they have to get their hours somehow. The second thing is EMDR. And you can do that through the app, or you can find someone who's doing that, and then or a practitioner. The third step, the big one, probably the biggest thing for me was 12-step recovery. And for a big one for me was adult children of alcoholics. That's a separate group, ALANON, and then also Codependence Anonymous. You can do any of these, and there's books on it, but it's really helpful to be in a space with other humans and to just speak and be heard and have people talk to you after. It was like, I mean, in a sea of being alone, this was like, out of everything, this and the therapy was like the best. And the third is EFT. And I did this tapping stuff for like hours on end. And when I started to feel even a little bit of a difference in my body, it was a success to me. So none of these things, I'll say at the time, when I was looking out from the place of having DP or DR, did I think, this cured me. But looking back, I'm like, all of that stuff made a difference. So, and there's this saying about, like, you hit a rock, you hit a rock, you're trying to crack it open, and finally on the 100th blow, it cracks open. So I would say that's what happened with my recovery from DP and DR. It was like, I did everything, and I don't know what worked, but I did everything I could. And it looks like you all are doing that. So I hope this was helpful. And this is my video that is basically like everything I did. Okay, and if I think of anything else, I will post it. Okay, much love to you. And I'll be in touch soon. Bye.